Everyone would please have a seat and join, well, actually, I want you to stand because we're going to lead the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll ask Mr. Manuel if he would lead that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just so you understand, I'm going to be leading the meeting today because Commissioner Tabb is due to her mother's death, she is not here. So I'll be leading the meeting. And the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for October 1st, the regular meeting minutes.
Move the approval of the minutes for October 1st, 2015.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments or corrections, additions to the minutes? If not, all in favor of approval of the minutes for Thursday, October 1st, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Approval of purchase orders.
I'll move approval of the purchase order dated October 15th in the amount of $16,800.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase orders in the amount of $16,800. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And moving down to the accounts payable for October 8th.
I'll move approval of accounts payable October 8th in the amount of $250,360.22.
I'll second it. Is there discussion, comments? If not, all in favor of approving the accounts payable for October the 8th in the amount of $250,360.22 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And October 15th accounts payable would be next on the agenda.
Approval of the accounts payable for October 15th in the amount of $70,434.50.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor of approving the accounts payable for October 15th in the amount of $70,434.50 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Unanimous. And now we're down to approval of manual checks. And I didn't see those.
Yeah, they're in there, behind the standard accounts payable.
Oh, I see them. Yep, they sure are. Yep. Okay, so manual checks for, well, I have October 16th.
There's
October
as well.
Yeah.
Is that on the previous? Okay, yes, here it is. Okay, so I need a motion to approve manual checks for October 8th in the amount of $164,712.07.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
That one's really high because of the impact fees are in there for manual checks.
Yes, yes. All right. Any discussion? Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the approved manual check signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Manual check approval for October 16th.
Move approval in the amount of $53,545.56.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the manual checks for October 16th in the amount of $53,545.56. Is there discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are now down to payroll approval for October 8th.
Move
And
approval of the payroll in the amount of $233,860.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve payroll in the amount of $233,860 for October 8th. Is there discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries and it's unanimous. Announcements, Ms. Grove?
Had a request to move the county commissioner reports to the next thing on the agenda, and other than that, there are no changes.
Is there any objection to moving the commissioner reports to here? Okay. All right, Mr. Pellich? You want to go first for commission reports?
Commission reports. I'll touch on two issues rather than get into the various meetings that I attended. First of all, I had a CAT scan last week. I've always been open, transparent about what's going on with my situation. I can tell you the reports came back excellent. Everything is stable, and there is no new growth, so I'm quite ecstatic about that. That only bodes well for the future. The second thing I want to comment on is something that has come to my attention from a number of different sources, and it concerns me. It concerns me as a citizen of this county, and it concerns me about the depths that some people will go to slander an individual. I have heard from a number of different sources that a candidate or potential candidate for the office of prosecuting attorney is being labeled out on the streets as being a non-citizen, a non-American, a person of color, which makes him questionable, a person who, because of his lineage, is a potential terrorist. And this sort of thing, to me, is just completely nonsensical, inane, and unacceptable from any person's point of view. And I would urge you, each of you, if you hear anything like this, to shut it down. Specifically, I'm referring to the comments that are being made against Hassan. Please do not take any of my comments to suggest that I am endorsing Hassan for the office. That's not my intent. What I am doing is trying to establish a defense for unscrupulous comments that are being made. Hassan has appeared before this commission a number of times. He is a professional, he is a citizen by birth, and he's put a lot of bad guys in jail. So I would hope if you hear any comments to this, you would shut them down and tell the people that you're hearing from to get their facts straight. And I would hope my fellow commissioners would also endorse these comments. So thank you.
Well, I certainly endorse them, and I think it's a sad commentary to what we have to deal with in today's society when people want to do what they know and think is the right thing for the rest of our for our citizenry. It's I mean, I've known Hassan for a long time, and I think any attempts to undermine the facts or skew what the political his political efforts by using that kind of tactic is pretty low. And I certainly do appreciate Commissioner Pellish's comments this morning, and I would agree with everything he said. Anyone else have any comments to make?
Are we going to do the reports?
Well, I didn't know, I was just supporting what Walt had to say, but we're not quite ready for our other reports yet, but I'm going to go back to
Well,
Walt.
I totally agree with what you and Walt have said about Hassan. I consider him to be a friend of mine, and he's active in the party with me, and honestly, he's done a great job as an assistant prosecutor, and as Walt said, he's put a lot of the bad guys behind bars, and he works so really hard at his job. So certainly, I'm upset. I hadn't heard this rumor mill or whatever, but it's totally unwarranted, in my opinion.
I agree with what each of you have said. My personal opinion, slanderous campaigning from anyone, there's just no place for it. If you don't have something of substance to say, that's the way you go. Move it back to the issues at hand and stick with substance. That's the way my thought process has always gone.
Do you want to, you're welcome. Do you want to continue with your? That's your report? Well, okay. So then, I just would say that on Sunday, and I'm glad there are a lot of people here today, on Sunday I attended the Arttober display at the Happy Retreat, and if you've not been there, take some time to go. It's absolutely amazing. We have some very talented people in this county who have contributed to that, and if you haven't been there yet, just take a few minutes to walk through and see what's there. It's pretty incredible. So other than that, I've just been working on county commission issues and doing some research on those issues, and here I am today. So I'll move it on to Dale.
I attended a PSD meeting and was somewhat dismayed that the folks at the PSD did not want to listen to the delegation from Charlestown about consolidation and those types of issues until after a package that they've put before the PSD, the Public Service Commission, so forth, was acted on. Then I attended Parks and Rec's public meeting to discuss the master plan for parks in our county, and unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of participation at Wright Denny, but we have in the past, and we're hoping that the next meeting will be more people there to participate. Attended a day report center meeting, and everything's moving along, and I think that we are seeing some reductions in our regional jail bill, and I think it can be accredited to the Jefferson Day Report Center, and not only that, the good work they do in trying to turn people's lives around. Rhonda, Eddie, and those folks over there are doing a fantastic job. I attended a dinner at the Clarion talking about the future of horse racing in our county, and I know they're here today to talk to us about that, and I'm glad to see them, and I'm sure that we'll be listening to what they have to say. I attended the Middle Way Days, and they had a good crowd. It was pretty cool. A lot of things to do and to eat. And then I attended the Planning Commission on Tuesday. We worked on the campground ordinance. It'll be brought back to us in our next meeting, and hopefully we'll get it on to this body. We scheduled a special meeting on the 27th to work on the mass gathering ordinance. When we worked on the campground, it was getting relatively late after we finished that, so we're going to try to do a special meeting and get that to this body as well.
Commissioner Bell?
So for me, the 1st and the 8th, as with every Thursday, we had juvenile drug court going on. The 4th through the 6th, I was in Charleston for the WVACO board meeting where we talked mostly about legislative priorities. You guys should all have a copy of those in the packet for each of the different groups. One of the things that didn't make it to the list for county commissioners, but a very lengthy discussion on, was regional jail costs and alternatives to bring that down. We were discussing a lot about day report centers and some other programs, home confinement, drug courts, and those types of things. It was well received with most of the folks that were there. On the 7th, with Commissioner Manuel, I was at the Criminal Justice Board meeting. One of the good key takeaways from there, the health department funded 1,000 kits of naloxone for the day report center that they'll be getting in over there before too long. On the 9th, Board of Health meeting that was productive. On Sunday the 11th, I was invited to go down to Atlanta, and I went down, had a meeting with the mayor of Atlanta, and it's quite interesting. Some of the same problems that we face here in our little county, they have the same issues in the big city. So we had a lengthy discussion about some of those. I met the congressman for that region as well. He came into the meeting for a little while, and then they had me, I marched with in the head of the Atlanta Pride Parade, which was a good time for everyone that was there. Two quick shameless plugs, though. On the 24th, at St. Andrews Mountain Community Center, there will be a free flu shot clinic from noon to 4 from the health department. And then on the 25th is the Pink luncheon, and purse auction that the Extension Office puts on supporting breast cancer. So 2 good events in the community to go out to. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on. If there's nothing else from commissioners, we'll move on. Stephanie, do you want to do yours now, or do you want to wait till?
We should wait. It's
Okay.
gonna be lengthy for some of them, so we should
Okay.
wait.
Okay, all right. So we'll move on to remind me, and I forget because I just checked it off.
Okay.
You're down on the list a little bit later, though, anyway. So we're down to the public comment portion of the meeting, and I have a couple of people here who are desirous of making a public comment. And I will tell you a little bit about the rules for public comment. You're to come to the desk when you're called, or the table when you're called, and speak into the microphone. It's automatic, so it should pick up after your voice is directed into the mic. And then you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. Jessica will set the timer, and please be respectful of the time that you are allotted to make your public comments. I have 2 people who have signed up. The first one is Marty Cable, and Marty, you can come forward and have a seat at the table and tell us what you want us to know.
I feel privileged to be before the commission here, the ladies and gentlemen of the commission. I'm here this morning to endorse agenda number 1 that's going to be brought before you by some other folks. I did not want to mean to upstage them, but this is the way the situation works. This is when I got time to speak. I represent a lifelong residency here in the county, working on farms, and been in our own business since 1969. Our ancestors came down out of Pennsylvania and settled in Cabletown and had a mill there, and about 5 generations worth of cables have been in the agricultural business here in Jefferson County. I currently have 2 sons in our operation. It's a corporation, and we trade as High Horizons Farm. I'm here to bring forth my thoughts concerning any issues that may arise down the road and from any entities, and mainly in Charleston, I think, to support the ongoing livelihood of the horse industry here in Jefferson County. The horse industry here in Jefferson County goes back to, I think, late 1930s. It's been a viable entity since. I represent coming here as a vendor of things that the horsemen use, hay and straw. We had a little meeting the other day, and I was talking with the manager of Southern States, and he reported that 35% of their business is with the horsemen, mainly feed and other related items that they use in their everyday equine husbandry practices. So that's part of why I'm here. The other part is to emphasize that if these horse farms cease to be, they're very subject to being developed. I will throw out the situation with the orchard business, goes back several years. The Huntfield subdivision was once all the bird orchard. Across the road, Cloverland Heights was an orchard. The Porter Orchard was called. Eastland is built on one of the Robinson orchards. When those entities became not viable, not economically feasible, and the land is very prone to being developed. I love the open space. I promote the farmland preservation, and if this industry does not continue, I think you're going to be looking at a lot more homes than what you're seeing around over the county now. Thank you.
Mr. Cable.
Thank you.
All right, the next person to speak is David Tabb.
Good morning. I'm here today to contact Judge Fry to let him know that you're still not in compliance. That's pretty sad. It's even sadder to see in the minutes that you went into executive session to discuss the issue of whether to put up a 4 or 6 flag. You couldn't do it in front of the public. Really? Really? The other issue that Mr. Commissioner Pellish brought up, making comments about people. Y'all didn't have a problem promoting, calling me a gadfly. Didn't have a problem with the paper putting in there that Socrates once likened himself as a gadfly and the Athenians put him to death. Didn't have a problem with that. But yet, somebody else that may be your friend or whatever, you don't have a problem standing up and saying, hey, enough is enough. Right in a courtroom, I'm called Mr. Flag. I've adopted it. Proud to wear it. Didn't have a problem doing that. Not a single one of you came up to me and said, Mr. Tabor, we're sorry. That should not have happened. Not a single one of you. And Eric Bell talking about that he went down to Atlanta or wherever that they have the similar problems. So, question to Mr. Bell, do they have problems down there with people calling people's names? Just a thought. Racetrack issues. 4 or 5 years ago, the racetrack was going to solve all our problems as soon as these table games came in. Every problem that we could think of, we were just going to have all kinds of money. Not to worry about taxes or anything else. And look where we are. Upside down. We were doing better just with the slots than we ever have with the table games. Now they want to get rid of the horses. It's in the law that you can't. Again, pretty sad. So my question to the commission is, when you take this information from the track people, are you going to go into executive session and talk about it? Y'all have a nice day.
Have I missed anyone? Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment who is not registered? All right. I do want to recognize our state delegate who is in the audience, Mr. Paul Espinoza. Welcome, Mr. Espinoza. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 1. What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, she wasn't here. I mean, she didn't sign up, so I didn't have, but please come on up, and you will need to fill out one of these, but come on up and make your comment, and then you can fill out.
I wasn't registered to speak. I think they were just saying another state representative.
Oh, okay, I think you're exactly right, and welcome, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you before. Jill Upson, thank you so much for being here today.
I'd like to introduce myself also. I'm a field representative and caseworker for the Honorable United States Congressman Alex Mooney.
Okay,
Been
thank
here
you.
on several occasions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next, moving on to the next item on the agenda, 9:45. Mr. Ken Lowe is here. And Mr. Lowe, do you want to come on up? I just want to clarify something, though, and I believe that, I didn't see you back there, Mr. Rutherford. How are you? Good. I want to clarify that the commission, I believe, last year, prior to the legislative session.
It's actually this year.
Oh, this
So
year?
the beginning of this year,
Okay.
there was a horse summit, and thank you, Jessica, she made this timeline for me. There was a horse summit on January 8th, and it was first on the agenda for January 15th. At that time, the commission said it was premature to vote on it, and then there was a unanimous vote to approve a resolution on March 10th, which we then provided. We did not get this resolution from Mr. Lowe. We got it from Maria, I can't remember her name at the track, and she gave us a resolution that they've been floating around, and it does have a slightly different section at the end. So it looks the same except at the end. We just got this yesterday.
Oh,
So
okay.
It is, so the resolution before, you said that you support live thoroughbred racing at the Hollywood Casino and thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia. And the new resolution says all of those things, but that also you support an adequate purse fund sufficient to sustain year-round live thoroughbred horse at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races.
Okay,
So,
thank
and
you.
I assume that's what you're going to ask them to support today.
I might give you the latest and greatest that you.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you got a different one.
This-
Thank
I
you.
don't want to say final, but this is what we need right here. All these other folks I know. So that's, thank you, sir. If you need more, I can get them.
Mr. Lowe?
Thank you. I feel like I'm in the hot seat. Can I stand
You
up
are,
a little
you
bit?
are in the hot seat. That is the hot seat.
Okay.
But please make yourself comfortable. Try not to feel like it's the hot
Try
seat.
not to get burned.
Just don't get elected. It's more comfortable in the seat in my office. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to be here today. Madam Chairman, I know everybody now, and proud of that, and proud to be here. Let me start by saying September 17th, 1948, I was born in this town, Jefferson Memorial Hospital. Walt, you didn't know I was that old. It was 1948.
I thought it was 1840.
You see how far back we go. But having said that, some years later, it's 1954. It happens to be on this very day, 1954, October the 15th, at about 12:30 in the afternoon. A terrible thing happened to this county. It was a hurricane. It was Hazel. Blew at 78 miles per hour, the winds. It was Saturday, as I said. I was there, here. In fact, I was with my mom, guess where? At the racetrack. She liked me to go to the racetrack. I loved horses. I was there. And this terrible storm hit. I didn't know, or they didn't tell me, or they didn't know, it was a hurricane. And if you know about Hazel, it was really bad. 130-mile-an-hour winds. The eye was 40 miles wide. It was a tremendous, terribly bad thing. There we were at the racetrack, and races were called. And my mom got back in the car, and we're going back to Shepherdstown, and we go through Muzzy's Flat. The locals know where that is. Down the hill, Jim Canode used to live on the left, the big stone house. Trees are all over the road. I mean, big trees. We're dodging trees, and they're falling, and the wind's blowing, electricity's sparking, the wires are down, we're crossing them, and we got up the hill, and I remember my mom said, "Now, Kenny, remember." "Yes, Mommy." She said, "Don't tell your daddy where we were." We were at the track. That's how I remember that. But soon after that, I remember that day as vividly as I do, because it wasn't too long after we got home that things calmed down. I didn't know at the time that was the eye of the tornado. And it was okay for a couple hours, or seemed like a couple hours. The storm moved pretty fast. But it was very unique. It got surreal. It was unbelievably quiet. There was lightning off to one side and some wind blowing on the other side, but it was like everything was okay, not knowing that the worst was yet to come. And it did come soon after that. We got the brunt of the force and the rain. If you know anything about, and I'm not a meteorologist, but hurricanes, the worst is at the end. That's when that back wall hits, and we felt it. I truly believe that that's exactly where we are right now with this issue. We're talking about saving a county here in Jefferson County. We're in the eye of the storm. We think it's over. Well, it's over, but it's not over good. It's over bad. The very worst is yet to come, and that's why I'm here. And I can tell you that I'm going to now introduce a longtime friend of mine, Mr. George Rutherford, and I'm going to kind of hit him off the side first and tell you he shared something with me recently that's very unique. In about 1957, George and his wife were married here in Charlestown, and they spent their honeymoon at the racetrack, in the tack room, in the barn, because that's where George worked. George Rutherford, president of the NAACP.
Good morning. The Jefferson County NAACP met, and they are really concerned about the racing industry. They definitely don't want to lose it, so therefore they want a statement made to the county commission and other government agencies. I'd like to read it to you. The Jefferson County NAACP strongly support the Charlestown Horseman Benevolence Protection Agency, resolution in relation to maintaining and adequately providing for year-round live thoroughbred racing in Jefferson County. The branch is gravely concerned about the action taken by the West Virginia legislature in 2014. In 2005, the Worker Compensation Debt Reduction Fund was established. This action reduced the percentage of revenues going to the horseman purse by $11 million per year and applied it to the state Workers' Compensation Debt Fund. Up to 2014, this bill reduced the local horseman purse by nearly $60 million. A provision in the original bill stipulated that whenever the workers' compensation debt was paid in entirety, the annual $11 million appropriated would revert back to the purse fund. However, in the first special session of the 2014 legislature, this provision was changed and deemed to expire, and language was inserted to subject roughly half of all previous allocated purse money to appropriation. This action has had a devastating effect on the horse racing industry in Jefferson County. Besides the horsemen, the branch is concerned about the economic laws and its impact on the community, such as increased unemployment, increased homelessness, decreased real estate rental and sale, decreased tourism, increased tax, decreased farmers' income. In general, the entire community will be negatively impacted and will suffer. As president of the NAACP, I have personally met with the hard-working men and women that worked in the stable area, the bedding area, the parking areas, also owners, trainers, farmers, and merchants, and others. They are seriously concerned as to what will happen to their livelihood if racing is reduced or closed. The branch is requesting that the county and local municipal government request that our state legislators use whatever means necessary to repeal the action taken by the 2014 legislature and the funding returned to the horseman purse. Also, we request that the public to support the continuance of the year-round thoroughbred racing in Jefferson County by signing the online resolution. The future of racing affects all of us in the county. We cannot afford to lose it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I follow that up by saying to you, what happens to our community when live thoroughbred racing is diminished and the agricultural base is eliminated? Approximately 57% of the Jefferson County, as we all know, is considered farming ground. A great amount of those farms, we've heard that statistic, are involved one way or another with thoroughbred racing, breeding, boarding, or raising crops for the horse. When the green space farms and the families are basically forced out of the business, what happens next? Do the 4-H clubs survive? How about the future farmers of America? How about the Farm Bureau, the Jefferson County Fair? How about Camp Frame? Where does that all go? Where does it leave it? Can you imagine most of this land being developed, as Marty Cable said a while ago, and the issues that come with it? I mean, the asphalt, the shingles, the concrete, and all the people and all the problems. Could Jefferson County end up looking like PG County, Maryland? God, I hope not. According to the West Virginia School of Economics, and you've heard these statistics, over 2,000 people employed because of live racing and farms in the area. Think about it. In these economic times, if 2,000 local citizens went unemployed, and all the small businesses that are involved locally would be negatively affected, estimated well over $100 million in economic activity every year. And that's without using the minimum 3-time multiplier. So we're talking about losing $300 million? Wow. Since the days of the Washington family raising horses down Washington Street, right out here, breeding and raising crops to nurture these magnificent animals, and to one of the older racetracks in America, which most of you probably don't know about. It's located near Shepherdstown in NCTC. And if you call me, I'll show it to you. And the government knows it's there, and you can see it from the world map of Google. You can actually see the oval track. This is late 1700s that was done. So this community has continued to support and count on live year-round racing and breeding. Charlestown, with a full-fledged casino and only a limited number of racing days, which may eventually lead to 0 racing days, as the industry winds down and almost self-destructs. Charlestown, West Virginia, may become just another Atlantic City, New Jersey. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live anywhere near Atlantic City, New Jersey. Believe me, when it's gone, it's gone. Slot machines and table games were approved by the Jefferson County voters with the assurances that live racing would be promoted, enhanced, and continued if, quote, we the people, end quote, voted for casinos. Now somebody or some bodies want to change the rules, and the deal without even our approval. We voted for casinos. Was this a bait and switch, or did some know all along this was the game plan? Well, that issue remains to be solved, and that's not up to us today to talk about. I urge you, review the preambles that have been provided to you in both pieces of legislation, and you will understand the promises that were made to this community in order to secure votes and our support. And my reports or my remarks are by no means to be construed as representing any group, organization, entity, past or present. I'm here because I care. And believe me, most importantly, don't you think timing's not important? As I've said now before, privately and publicly, this industry will self-destruct. We are in the eye of the storm. And here's the way this works. I'll sit down, you won't hear my microphone. This is horse racing and breeding between my hands. The first thing that was done was 11, 13 million by some in purse money was reduced. Purses are what the owners get for running their horses, winning all the way down to sixth place, $100 below that. It shrinks it like this. So the purse money goes in. The next thing that's happened already is a reduction in days. By law, it was 235 racing days. It's now, the new contract, I'm told, understands it goes down to 190 days. It's shrunk again. So now you're in the eye of the storm, because what happens now and what is happening right now, owners who make this industry work, who pay the bills, who buy the horses, pay to have them trained, and the vets to take care of them and feed them, they're leaving West Virginia racing. The future's too uncertain. They leave. When they leave, it gets closer. And when they stop investing, stop buying, stop participating in horse racing in this community, guess what happens? There's no need for the foals. Then the breeding farms collapses. It's gone. It self-destructs. I'm telling you, we're in the eye of the storm. So if you think timing's not important, please think again. This battle starts here. It was caused by Charleston and influences, but it starts here. This group, please, you need to right away, yesterday, sign a resolution like that one that has more teeth into it, so that the good folks here, Jill, Vic are here, your delegates, our delegates and senators can take that ammunition, and there'll be more. Take that to Charleston and say, look here, here's the horsemen have 3,000 signatures. Here's the breeders. Here's the NAACP. Here's other groups that are coming. We can't let this happen. And we can't let one or two people in Charleston, West Virginia, or anywhere determine what happens to our county. Our future is in your hands. And I know you'll do the right thing. And I'm telling you, we're at the eye of the storm. Now is the time. It can't wait. It can't wait another day. If we could raise 1,000 people to get up and march down the street, I'll do it. George and I will be in front. We'll be in the front of that parade. And we'll park our cars and we'll walk to the courthouse or meet you here. But you need to move now. And I remind you of, I won't say I take credit for this line. I don't know if I read it or I made it up. Maybe I heard it, Walt. But the force and view, the force and voice of the people may count for nothing if they are not, or if they are withheld too long. Let me try that again. The force and voice of the people may count for nothing if they are withheld too long. You can't afford to wait another second. We can't afford to wait another day. Everybody's depending on you to start it. We'll be with you. There's a lot more that'll be with you. We'll support you all the way to Charleston and back. Right, Jill? Right, Vic? You with me? You with me, Vic? Putting you on the spot. Okay, I know everybody else is. We'll be there. So we're counting on you to pass the resolution, hopefully today. You've got a copy? Madam Chairman, I'll answer any question you have if you want to ask, or anybody else.
Eric?
I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution before us and ask that Mr. Lowe please read it for the record.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll read it into the record before we vote, because I have not had a chance to review this, and so I would really like to wait until we have a chance to review it, but I have no objection to it being read into the record. It would have been nice to have it before this morning, but we have what we have, so go ahead.
All right. Resolution, be it resolved and declared by each of the persons and entities whose signatures appear below. First, that year-round live thoroughbred horse racing and thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia cannot be sustained without an adequate purse fund at the Hollywood Casino at the Charlestown races. Second, that year-round live thoroughbred horse racing at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races and thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia are an integral part of the eastern panhandle of West Virginia's agricultural base, and that agriculture is a critical ingredient in West Virginia's economy. Third, that year-round live thoroughbred horse racing at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races and local thoroughbred horse breeding farms in West Virginia protects and enhances tourism in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, including but not limited to hotels, motels, breakfast, bed and breakfast, restaurants, historic tourism, and purveyors and sellers of goods and services of any kind and variety. And that tourism is a critical ingredient in West Virginia's economy. Fourth, that year-round live thoroughbred racing, horse racing at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races and thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia promote job creation and employment and the generation of state revenues, and that job creation and continued employment are essential not only to the financial and moral well-being of those who are employed, but to the spouses, the children, and the families of those so employed. Without the benefits of such employment would be forced to rely upon scarce public resources or suffer penury. Fifth, that year-round live thoroughbred horse racing at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races and thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia generate tax revenues that support the provisions of essential government services, including public education, police and fire services, and our municipal and county governments who, without such tax revenues, would be forced to further scale back essential services and employment. Wherefore, as evidenced by our signatures below, we, meaning you, support an adequate purse fund sufficient to sustain year-round live thoroughbred horse racing at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown races. And we support thoroughbred horse breeding at farms in West Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. I support this resolution, but I think it would be inappropriate for us as a commission to vote on it today without the president being here. I think we should have all 5 members of the commission present to pass the resolution. My question, Ken, I think it would be very helpful if you would explain for the audience a bit how the purse fund is determined and what the makeup is. I think it might help some people understand the problem a little bit better.
And I'll do my best at that. Randy Funkhauser is here, is probably better at this than I am, but it's the purses, which I've said are the amounts of money that go to the winning owners that allow for the bills to be paid. But at the same time, those purses are derived from different sources, from the amount of profits that are made, the amount of money that's been wagered. The state and the track and the horsemen get a percentage of the handle, less for off-track betting, where most of the money comes from now, as opposed to on-track betting. That's what's occurring. Now, there's something that needs to be explained, I think. There are those who are negative about this industry or wish it to go away that will tell you that horse racing is subsidized. Maybe that's what you're asking me. Horse racing and breeding is not subsidized. It's an investment. It's just like a Cabela's or a Procter & Gamble or Macy's. I served for 7 years on the on the West Virginia Economic Development Council. That's the entity that is the board of directors for the development office. So before any deal was offered to a company to come to West Virginia, and it's very usual, it's not uncommon at all. You do it, you compete with other states. But we had to sit there and go through and see what these companies were offered to come to West Virginia. It's an investment. Nobody says subsidy about that, and they shouldn't. It's an investment. And that's what's being done with racing. And I don't disagree with anybody getting anything if it's worthwhile and it's properly adjudicated in the sense that it's the due diligence is performed. But when you've got a known commodity, when you've got all of this at stake, when you know it works, and most importantly, when you knew what we were promised, that it would continue, and would be promoted as long as we voted for it. And darn it, we voted for it. Why did it all change? That's why. Did I answer your question, Walt? Okay. And that's critical. I know that's one of the that's one of the things that are said around Charleston. And unfortunately, some of the people there that are ill-informed believe that. Randy? Oh, that's not.
Yeah, your purses, traditionally, they come from the sources, the original sources were our live hand. I think you
Yeah.
need,
The
Yeah,
microphone.
you're going to have to come up to the microphone so you can be recorded and so we can hear what you're saying, and everyone in the audience also. Now, before you go any further, Mr. Funkhauser, do we have unanimous consent? Mr. Funkhauser is not on the agenda to speak. Do we have unanimous consent to allow him to speak? Very well. You may proceed.
the traditional purse funds from 1933 until we passed the video lottery in 1997, I guess it was, when we voted for it to begin here. It was all based upon a 2% of the live, 8% of the live handle. That has changed. There have been additional sources of revenue. One has been simulcasting funds. We get far less of that than we do on the live handle. Basically, that was set up so that we could send our signal to other tracks, and other tracks could send their signal to ours, and it would be just as if it was there was live racing at your racetrack on either one of those. We get somewhere between 1 and 2% of that, which is far less than the 8%. With the video lottery, however, which was very important, I think, to the county and to us, we were statutorily granted 14% of all of the mutual handle for purses for horsemen. The breeders were given 1.5% of that, but that was divided, the 1.5% we had here and the 1.5% at the two dog tracks. Whatever those amounts were put into a pool, and 50% was given to the Thoroughbred Development Fund, 50% to the Dog Development Fund. With the table games, again, there was a far less percentage of that given to the horsemen. And I think that was one of the original objections, as well as the county. There was, when the ante, I think, was upped to the schools and things, people were more, favorable to have the table games here. But all of those combined to get purses. What has happened to us there have been numerous changes in the legislature that have downgraded the statutory amounts that we have gotten. The first was in 2001. They did basically a statutory adjustment that basically took away 10% of any monies over and above the $132 million cap that the racetrack had done in 2001. In other words, our betting got up to as high as $430 million on the machines. Well, that meant $300 million times 10% of that 30 million was taken away from the purse fund that would have normally gotten it. Okay, that was the first. And that was given back 58% of that monies went back to the state, 42% went to the Tracks for Capital Reinvestment Fund. In 2005, Joe Manchin, in wanting to, basically he had over $3 billion workman's unemployment fund debt. He wanted to reduce that debt by targeting 13 industries in this state. One of them happened to be horse racing. The problem is only the purses, not anything to do with the racetracks or any other entities in racing, were involved. We were probably the smallest entity. We were asked to give $11 million a year, which we did from 2005 to currently. The tracks themselves were not asked to participate in this. One of the pieces of legislation said when that is paid off, An actuary will tell the governor when it's paid off, and the monies will return to the original people. They will no longer have to pay that. That changed for us in 2014 in the haircut bill. The haircut bill, which passed in 2014, not only provided an additional 10% cut, which we all understood. I understood that. We fought it. And it actually, it did not make the deadline at 12 o'clock on Saturday night. Senator Unger and Senator Snyder were virtually kind of filibustered that. But the governor still wanted this on the special call. And we all assented that if it was strictly the bill that came from the House, which was a strict 10% bill, we did not like it, but we would accept it. That bill, after it was passed, and it's my understanding that everyone in those chambers knew that this was the bill that supposedly came over from the House. That's one they were voting on. There was a change in that bill, somehow between the time it was passed and the time it was written and signed by the governor. It included two other things. One was that we would no longer get a statutory, it subjected about 35 to 40% of our money to a government appropriation. We call it below the line. It's a hard thing to understand. You know, the Lottery Commission had this bucket list, and there was above the line that was statutory, and below the line was all subject to appropriation. Appropriation means that 2 minutes before 12, someone can stand up, as you know, Mr. Manuel knows, they can stand up and say, well, we want to appropriate this, this, and this. It doesn't have to go through a committee process. It's very dangerous for us, and they've already taken additional monies out of that, and we think that this is going to increase. They took $1 million the first year, $2 million last year. The other thing that that bill did was we were the only ones that were discriminated against so far in taking away the workers' compensation clause that allowed us to get our $11 million back. You know, and that's going to be paid off, my understanding, this March, somewhere between March and June of this year. That $3 billion is going to be paid off, and the monies are supposed to be paid back by the original legislation, and we have letters from Governor Manchin promising that we would get that money back. So, you know, this is what we're fighting up there, is a constant whittling away of our purse funds to a point where we had the right formula. The formula for the breeding and for the purses here, it grew racing. We went from a very small, backward racing state to where even for this Breeders' Classics, I don't know if you saw the article that Eric Zimney wrote from the track. There are some powerful horses here. I mean, worldwide, you know, bred horses. And, you know, and he talks about many of these horses. I mean, you've had a horse that was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, that Baldoni, that Buck Woodson raised. And this was a world-class horse. We've got more of those. Jim Miller out here on 51 has just started a farm and invested. He's got some worldwide horses there. He's one of his mares in partnership with Coolmore, who's the biggest farm in the world, is being bred to the leading horse in the world called Galileo. You know, and these are the kinds of horses that we have here, and it's all over. I mean, Mr. McKee's here. He's got a half-brother to Speightstown. He's one of the leading, you know, sires in the country. The horse is doing extremely well here. You know, we're all bringing in these horses. I've got a horse called Limehouse. He's been in the top 100 sires for the last 5 years in the world. But now you're cutting it. You know, we are faced now with this downturn in revenue to a point where we can no longer exist. We're losing the stability of the business.
Excuse me, Mr. Funkhauser, we do need to move on.
Okay.
And so, you know, I would ask that you just wrap up, Mr. Lowe.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
think the main thing to understand is, as we have been whittled away, we're losing the stability in this business to make business decisions 3 or 4 years in advance, which we must do in the breeding and racing of these horses. And with that, we are losing the people who have come here and invested. You know, you know, and they are going to other places that are more competitive. We need your help in sustaining this industry for the good of all of Jefferson County and for the preservation of these farms.
In closing, save our county. It's up to you all. Thank you.
And I think you're probably preaching to the choir up here. So the motion's on the floor. Dale?
Oh, I was just going to mention, when we were working on those bills in the legislature, we did put in the contracts that were necessary for the VLT to operate with the horsemen, with the breeders, and with the parimutuel clerks. But we have to remember that there are subject to legislative action. So they could take those out as fast as they put them in if they decided that they were not important to the rest of the legislators or whatever. But that is in there, and that's something that I hope that our delegation would be aware of and would safeguard that those contracts are necessary to operate that VLT with the breeders, horsemen, and the parimutuel clerks. So unfortunately, they're there today, and like you say, they could be gone tomorrow.
Walt?
One other thing, I would like to have more information about this $11 million not coming back. At least that's what I thought I heard. I'd like to know the rationale for that, because that just does not seem reasonable to me that all of a sudden the deal changes. And I would urge each of our legislators to understand that subject very, very thoroughly.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. So the motion is on the floor. I know you had mentioned earlier that you'd like to wait until the next meeting so Commissioner Tab could be here. I mean, I don't know what the is.
I'll do whatever.
So, okay. So what's the pleasure of the, I know the motion is on the floor, so do you want to move forward with the vote, or do you want to table it until Commissioner Tab is back? And
Well, I'm sure Commissioner Tabb would like to vote, I think, in the affirmative. I'm sure in the affirmative on this motion. And I would ask Mr. Lowe, I don't think that, when's our next meeting?
The 29th of October.
The 29th of October would not make a really difficult problem, or what, I'm just asking for your opinion.
The eye of the storm will continue past the 29th of October. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So I'm
so we
going,
can postpone.
yeah, I'm going to move that we postpone until the time certain at our next meeting, and we'll have this on the agenda.
Okay. I'll second that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to postpone the action on this motion until the 29th of October. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh.
I have one further motion.
Oh,
The-
okay.
The two letters that were included in our packet, the one from the NAACP and the one from Mr. Lowe, I would ask, and also the resolution, be placed in a packet and sent to our legislators for the November 5th meeting, so that they could have that information before them when they come in to discuss legislative action and the upcoming legislative session.
Okay. Is that, we don't
Just make it
really need-
unanimous
Yeah,
consent.
is it, do we have unanimous consent to do that? Okay, all right, thank you. Anything further on that subject? I think we voted on the motion, and thank you all very much, and thank you for your comments and the information, appreciate it. And we'll see you on the 29th. Thank you. Yes. The next item on the agenda is item number 2. That will happen by telephone conference. And so we'll take a minute to get Tabby Bennett on the line.
Okay, while you're taking
a second, I'm going to put you on speaker. For them to, okay, all right. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? I can. I'm going to turn you up a little bit.
Well, we need to put a mic by her.
Okay, we're just waiting for two of our commissioners to return to the room.
Okay. We need Commissioner Bell and Commissioner Emanuel back into the room so we can move forward with the next agenda item.
Forgot we were getting on the telephone.
Sorry, folks.
Doesn't feed the bulldog, right?
Okay, Tabby, we have all the commissioners here, so whenever you're ready, go ahead and present what you want to talk to them about.
For the public's benefit, we are here on item number 2. We have Tabby Bennett from Orion Strategies, Coalition for Safe, Affordable Food, and she is requesting the commission to endorse a statement of support for the National Food Labeling Standards. So that's what we were discussing, and Tabby, you are being heard by, I don't know, a few people here in the commission meeting room.
Millions in the...
And millions in a listening audience. Good morning. Go ahead with your presentation.
What we're working on is a food labeling issue, and we just thought it might concern you all because it can have an effect on food prices for things like county jails, schools, hospitals, local businesses, things like that. And it can also really hurt businesses, especially food-producing businesses, because individual states are trying to create their own food labeling laws regarding whether something is GMO, which is a genetically modified organism, or organic. And if the states do this, then it could force food producers to have up to 50 different food labeling and distribution systems instead of one national one. So what we're trying to do is get a national law passed for the GMO versus organic labeling so that states won't do it individually and cause production and different prices with materials and regulatory burdens to increase for farmers, food producers, and things like that, and distributors, so that then that price will carry over to the consumer and the restaurant owner and the people who bake breads and use different ingredients to make their products that they sell. And since everybody eats, it kind of affects everybody. So we're just trying to establish a national level in that way so that we can encourage Senator Manchin to vote in support of that. And it already passed through the House in July. It's called the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act. And it's going to be in the Senate soon, so we're just trying to encourage Senator Manchin to vote in support of that so that we can keep food prices affordable for everyone.
Okay, questions by commissioners? Mr. Manuel?
You said it's an accurate food labeling. Can you explain that to me a little bit? Because, I go to the store, and if I'm trying to buy things that are organic or things that are good for me and my health, basically, how will this help me, or how does that work today? If it says organic today, can I be pretty safe in purchasing it, or how's that go?
It's not necessarily like saying that organic and GMO labeling is bad. It's just putting it, because if states are wanting to do it anyway, then we feel like we should do it at a national level so that prices can remain affordable for everybody. Because if states do it individually, then it's going to cost a lot more than if the FDA would do it. And like, for instance, Delegate Mike Moneypenny has tried to pass legislation every year in West Virginia since 2013, and that legislation would fine West Virginia food producers and farmers $100,000 if they didn't use the right labeling system for any part of the food that uses GMOs. And so we're not saying that GMOs are good or bad. We're just saying that there should be a national law instead of a state law, so that states don't individually create their own. Does that answer your question?
I think it does to a point, because if you have these laws in each one of the states, it could mean that you're taking away a competitive factor for agriculture. Because I live close to the borders or whatever, and I have to do some certain things, but my neighbor does not. Whereas if it was a federal regulation, all of us would be playing on an equal level playing field. Is that correct, or?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. The law would set different labeling systems for bordering states. So yes, as you live close to the border, you might be doing something different than somebody else who just lives a couple of miles from you, but it's in a different state. And that can make it very expensive for companies in West Virginia to sell their products outside of our border. And there would be different labeling systems for each state and different distribution systems, different marketing, and that all would add to food prices increasing, which is what we don't want.
Okay. Any other questions for Tabby?
So you're asking us to approve this letter?
She's asking that we approve to endorse the statement of support for the National Food Labeling Standards.
The list to endorse HR 1599.
Yes. Okay. And I just would like to ask, I know, do you see any issues with this? I'm asking County Administrator if she can think of any issues that would arise as a result of supporting or not supporting this.
I can't, I mean, you have no authority, obviously, yourself over food labeling. I think some other county commissions have already signed the support. Is that true, Tabby? How many commissions have you gotten to sign the statement?
Yes, we've had a few. I think, I remember all of them, but
Okay.
I think like an average of 7 to 10 around there at this point. But we still have meetings going up until November, so we're still working on several. But yes, we're contacting all county commissions because this affects everybody.
And your plan is just to present the signed statements to Senator Manchin?
Right, we're just going to mail them to him and show that different communities are behind this and that he should be encouraged to vote in support of that so that he can take care of West Virginians.
This particular issue, our Ag Commissioner is absent today. I feel that Jane Tabb, because of her outstanding work with agriculture in Jefferson County, should be here before we take any action. So I would ask that we just simply move this to the next agenda.
29th of October.
Yes, because I feel more comfortable. I really would put a lot of faith in her opinion on what direction we should go with this kind of thing, because it's a little bit out of my field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. I think it would be, if we could postpone it until October 29th, it would probably, Commissioner Tabb would probably know the right questions to ask and maybe provide a little more knowledge because of her expertise in the area of agriculture. So,
I'll ask unanimous consent that we.
is there objection? None. Okay. Thank you, Tabby, for the information and for agreeing to have the discussion with us via telephone conference. And we are going to hold this over until the 29th of October so that we can have a discussion with all 5 commissioners present.
Okay, thank you. I do have one more thing to add quickly.
Okay.
The West Virginia Department of Agriculture, as well as the Farm Bureau, are also behind this, the West Virginia Farm Bureau. And if that helps your decision, I just wanted to let you know that actually Commissioner Helmick from the West Virginia Department of Agriculture is a spokesperson for this issue. And we are looking forward to your vote.
Okay, well, that will happen, it just won't be today. So we're going to hold it over till October 29th so that we can have input from all 5 commissioners. So it sounds like something that is certainly something that we might be able to get behind and support. But we just would rather do it on the 29th of October when all 5 commissioners are present.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you, Tabby. Commissioner Bell has a
Thank you all.
question. Just a minute.
Not a
hold on.
question, just one more quick comment. I would encourage each of you to read HR 1599 in its entirety with the amendments before we bring this back to the table as well. I have multiple times.
Okay,
So-
very good. All right. Okay, Tabby, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Because it's been changed about 4 times.
Okay. So we'll put this on the 29th agenda.
What's interesting to
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 3. Mr. Daniel Bickerman with the West Virginia American Water is here to discuss the benefits of a public-private partnership solution. And have a seat, gentlemen.
Yes, handouts, can we?
Yes,
Sure.
by all means. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you all for this opportunity to speak with you. We really appreciate it. I'm going to be speaking to you from the stapled presentation that's included in the packet that you were given. I see you have a very lengthy agenda, so I'm going to give you a high-level overview of this so that we can try to get you close to back to your timetable that you're looking
you.
for. I want to applaud the Commission's efforts. I did attend your utility work session the other week. You showed a great deal of leadership in trying to direct the future infrastructure development in this county, and that's why I followed up to the Commissioners with a letter, because I think perhaps there's an opportunity that we may be able to provide some benefit to the county as a potential solution or part of a overall solution that you all developed. So I wanted to talk to you about that this morning. I'm not sure how much you know about West Virginia American Water Company. We're the largest water and sewer company in the state. We have about 171,000 customers. We've been operating the state for 129 years. Next year is going to be our 130th anniversary of operating a utility in this state. In fact, some additional information, we built the original Huntington water system. So we've been in, as long as that Huntington system's been in operation, we've provided a map to show you our service areas, just to see where we operate, so you get a flavor for the counties that we provide service in. One of the important points I wanted to make is, and I'm just flowing through this presentation, and if I go too fast, if you have any questions, I'm sure, please feel free to ask any time. I almost forgot my important guest that I have with me, sorry about this, is the president of our company. Oops.
I didn't see that too many.
I just delivered the package. I was just so energized to get started in this. Jeff McIntyre is the president of our company. He's been the president the last several years. I don't think he's had an opportunity to come before this commission previously, so I thought it might be a good opportunity for you to see who Jeff is in case you bump into him sometime in the future. And also, if there was any questions that you might have of Jeff, obviously he's the best person to answer on behalf of West Virginia American Water. And thirdly, really, I thought it was important that Jeff be here to show his level of commitment to helping work on a potential solution here as far as water and sewer infrastructure development in Jefferson County is. And his willingness to do West Virginia American Water Company continues to invest and reinvest in its infrastructure each and every year. It's an important part of your job as a utility owner in this state. You have to reinvest. The facilities age, they deteriorate, creates operational problems, creates customer service related problems. So you have to continue to reinvest, and we do that. This year, close to $43 million we'll be reinvesting back into our systems. Next year, we plan to operate around $40 million capital budget. So I'm telling you that to show you the benefit of the size of the organization that we bring and the level of capital investment that we bring to the table. I think it's an important component for consideration of your water and wastewater infrastructure needs in the future in this county. Also, West Virginia Americans' involvement, includes a sort of a corporate partnership with the communities when we serve. We expect that we'll be providing utility service in the area, so we're going to support the community in whatever way we can, whether through job fair opportunities, river cleanup opportunities. We provide environmental grants. We provide grants to fire departments. We have numerous employee engagement opportunities where our employees will participate in different community projects because we feel we want to be a part of the community, and we want people to see that we are, and so we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to those opportunities. We also have, I mentioned it here because I think it's really important, customer rates. It was mentioned at your all's utility workshop was an important consideration. We have felt that for quite a long time, and Jeff was instrumental in getting past what we call our reduced rate program for low-income users. If you can justify to the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources that your income level's at a certain point, then you will get a 20% discount on your water charges. So
At that point, the poverty level, or?
There's 4 different tests that they apply, including subsidies that people may get, but it's not really a low-income tariff, but it's a special purpose tariff to help people who need assistance. So I can't tell you all the specific categories, but there's a number of different eligibility tests that people can meet.
Well, I was just wondering because some of the folks in the public service district here, those folks are not able to pay their bill on time, and talking about some kind of discount for folks that are on limited incomes. Okay.
I'll leave a brochure that we provided. It's a bill insert that we've provided previously in case you'd like to see some information about that. West Virginia American is also part of American Water Works. We have regulated water and sewer operations in 16 states throughout the country. All that we do as a business is water and sewer. That's all we do. So whatever's involved in water and sewer activities, that's what our company's involved in. So I'm getting to the public-private partnership discussion. You've probably heard about, what is a public-private partnership? There's 100 different definitions of it. Basically, the way I look at it is we take the benefits that the public sector brings, we marry it to the benefits that the private sector brings together, and we work toward a common goal. And that's how I look at it. So I've provided you a couple definitions just to see where we're coming from so you know what we're talking about if we say public-private partnership. And we use kind of 2 tools principally. We have a investment in projects based on the Public Service Commission's rules, Rule 5.5 specifically, that tells us we're going to invest so much per customer in a particular project. So if it's a water customer, it's $4,161. If it's a sewer project and it's one residential sewer customer, it's $3,168. So if you have a project that you're working on, that funds are going to be made available by West Virginia American because of PSC Rule 5.5. So again, part of the partnership arrangement is you take the benefits, and that's one of them, the ability to provide capital. We also look to try to take advantage of the size, as I mentioned, of West Virginia American. So if we would be operating a utility in this community or in this county or nearby county that we are providing service to, we get to apply our statewide rate to. So if you have some large infrastructure needs here, we're spreading the costs over 171,000 customers versus the customer count that you may be having in your area. Furthermore, you have a certain limit because of your authority expands to the boundaries of Jefferson County. We can add customers in all 55 counties. So we try to be wise with our partnerships, that they're going to make a lot of sense for us to partner with. I mean, we clearly are excited about an opportunity. We'd like to discuss and develop further a partnership arrangement in Jefferson County with the county commission particularly. So there's opportunities to grow that number. Again, we're all struggling as utility managers to keep rates low because that's what our ratepayers are pushing for. But at the same time, we have to reinvest in these systems. And so that's a key component of that's, weighing that scale so it comes out, customers benefit, everyone benefits in the long run. The second tool that we use is the same kind of mechanism where we make an investment in the county. Now, one thing to consider is your PSDs and your municipalities in the county pay no property tax in your county. You get zero. Whereas if we have utility operations in your county, we're subject to property taxation. You immediately have that revenue stream available in your county. So that's a benefit that we bring to the table. What we have done in some counties, and this is, I believe we've done it in 6 counties, we've taken our new investment that we've made in the county, whether it's through an acquisition of a public service district or the participation in a new sewer line project, water line project, whatever it might be, that new taxable property, we have come up with a mechanism to say, okay, we just acquired, let's just for round numbers say it's, $25 million worth of utility plant assets in Jefferson County, of which 20 million of that is long-lived assets. Okay, so 5 million may be assets such as meters or vehicles that are, their useful life is maybe 5, 10, 15 years. But those facilities like mains, storage tanks, collection system mains may have a longer life, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. We would transfer ownership. Now, this is when it gets a little different, unique. We'll transfer ownership of those back to the county commission, the $20 million. Now, the county commission, will transfer title to those assets. The county commission gives us an industrial development bond for that $20 million. It's a non-cash transaction. It's just to prevent the county from going and selling the assets underneath it. So, but what that does is, now that $20 million is not subject to property tax in Jefferson County. Now, you didn't get any property tax before. Now you have property that's going to be subject to property tax, and you've taken it off the tax rolls, or at least a portion of it. And what we do is we say, okay, well, what would the property tax have been? Okay, let's just make up a number and say it's $200,000 a year. Then West Virginia American, because we no longer have the obligation to pay that property tax because of this transfer that we've made with the industrial development bond, we'll say, okay, we'll make that available to the county. Now, if you want to use that as debt service, which has been done in the previous cases, they use it as debt service, borrow money from the Infrastructure Council and construct water line projects or improve water lines in areas, such as the mountain systems. That comes to mind in this area where you're working on that. It could be sewer lines. The key part of all that relationship is West Virginia American's role here is we provide capital investment. O&M will run the systems that are built with those funds. Okay, we won't own those. They'll be owned by some entity that you all determine. But we rely on the direction we get from the county commission and through the public utility partner that you all establish. I mean, let's throw out as an example, Jefferson County PSD. Let's just say you determine that's the public partner. I mean, it makes sense to me because Jefferson County Public Service District sounds like it's your PSD. You now have, the way I look at it is, the direction that you provide that PSD, they set the course of action. We don't, we sit back, we're the operator of the system, of the utilities, we're the partner, but we don't take a role of, well, now we're just going to do this, that, and put water lines here, put sewer lines here. There needs to be a plan, some direction that is given by this county. And you'll see in some of the information that I provide is, that to me is the real value of this public-private partnership. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Cabell County, in Mercer County, Fayette County. What those county commissions did is they had a comprehensive water and sewer plan put together, and they said, your job, public utility partner, is, and water company, is I want these plans completed. And the plans were laid out, here we want water to go here, here, and here, sewer to go here, here, and here. And that's been the objective. Putnam County had a little different twist. Just to show you, they said, we do not want any water lines along the river, Route 61, because we want to use that for business growth. We want to build an industrial park down there. We want to put lines up here on the ridges, here, here, and here, so the people will build houses up there. Or the people that have houses won't move and build near the river. Take all that quality flat land along the river. That was their strategy. So, we were sitting back just as the utilities saying, okay, the county's providing the edict. So, I want you to kind of get the understanding that the leadership of this comes from the leadership of the county, and that's how this works. Let me jump real quick. I know you have a busy schedule.
We are really pushing the time limit here, and that's not your fault.
I understand. I'm just going to go over page 16, which is the benefits. And then the last comments I'll make is address next steps. Projects that you can't do on your own and we can't do on our own can be facilitated. We work together. It's been proven. We've done it before in other parts of the states, and believe me, in some places like Boone County, it's challenging to do that, and we've done it. You tend to focus on regional solutions, so you don't have entities kind of fighting over the same funds in the same area. So you have some entities that are going after the same funding in your county. They are in one end of the county versus the other. Now you're kind of working together, at least with the entities involved. And I will say, in several counties, not every utility is involved in the partnership. Many are, many chose not to. That's fine. But the county felt they wanted to move forward, and they did. You tend to have much more cooperation and direction from not only the county commissions, but the elected officials and health departments, DEP, the PSC. When you come to them with a project that you want approved and you tell them it's part of our plan, you tend to get more support.
I thought, and you can tell me, that you were quite successful in getting low-interest monies and grants and so forth from the infrastructure.
For clarification, we cannot get low-interest loans or grants, but our partners can.
Your partners, I'm
yes.
sorry. Let me.
And the reason why we've been successful, two main reasons. One is because we bring capital to the project. There is an investment component from West Virginia American available day one, so there's no question whether, do we need this or not? And the entities, this is part two of that, is the entities that provide funding for projects. They're looking to have their grants or their funding, whether it's loans, recirculated again and again and again. So our projects tend to get built. So now you're helping those entities, pass their grants and their loans through, and you're getting those replenished again. So we provide a benefit to those that make those decisions on funding. And that's why I think a lot of the projects that we've been involved with have been funded. Overall lower cost of the ratepayers. We are spreading our cost over all of our customer base. As I already said, greater control by the county commission. That was always an issue.
That brings me to a question that I had.
Sure.
You had me, with reasonable water and sewer rates to residents. I have my bill here for from just the sewer for this month, which I just wrote the check for, $118.66. That's for my sewer, and $77.53 for my water. And at the bus stop, I'm the low man. The others are paying more than I am because I have my grandkids put them on the bus, take them off the bus. It's my wife and I, and they have families, and their rates are higher than mine. So you're piquing my interest because I'm looking for a way to try to work and help the residents of Jefferson County, all of the water and sewer folks, all of them, to get their rates more reasonable. And you sound like a viable alternative and a viable way to go with this public and private partnership. So I'm really piqued in this, and I want to learn more and more about it.
We certainly like to come back. I know you're stressed for time here, and we don't want to take up any more time than is necessary, but we would love to come back or in a separate session, however you prefer, talk about this in more detail. I did provide one page that says next steps that just give you a suggestion on how we might want to proceed, so I would hopefully get some direction, and we would be glad to come back up here at any time and talk with folks and try to see what we can develop, maybe get some numbers together and try to make something happen here.
Thank you, and I appreciate your indulging our time schedule, but I do want to say that I am interested, and I do have to have more information, obviously. It's going to take a lot more information and research on our part as well, but I am interested in just having more of a discussion.
Great. Look forward to it.
Thank you. Walt?
Let me cut to the chase. You sat in the session we had. You heard all the discussion. You saw the protection of the various fiefdoms and the lack of cooperation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cost you to write a letter. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're here. What I would like to see from you in the next session is you addressing the specifics based on what you heard. How do we solve the problem? What specific things can you bring to the table immediately? And I'm not focused on rates. I understand the volume concept. I'm interested in the bigger picture. How do we solve the water and sewer problem for the entire county? That's my direction.
To do that, I would like to also ask if I could get some direction from this commission. What do you want from your water and wastewater assets in this county? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want them to do for you? Then you can go back and I think give you an answer to what you're looking for.
My answer is I want to see a fair and equitable system in place for the entire county.
Yeah.
I agree with
I
that.
would ditto that.
You know, the rates need to be somewhat consistent as opposed to now, because it seems like some of the, it's very inconsistent with the amount people pay for water and for sewer in Jefferson County. And I was impressed with the idea too that there would be some, if you go in those kinds of directions, there's some relief for those people who just don't have the ability to pay the much higher rates that I'm talking about. There are people out there that are living on very limited incomes, and they need help, and I like the idea of having some avenue that we can discount. Oh.
Commissioner Bell?
Sure. So my question's a little different, or statement's a little different. I'm very familiar with PPPs. I've dealt with them for a while. I'm also very familiar with your parent company. However, I've seen with you all specifically in West Virginia, you have very little exposure to sewer. And I'd like to see, when you come back, how you specifically would address some of the sewer issues here in the county with regards to your limited exposure in the state in that particular realm.
Let me address that a little bit, because I come to the state as a president of a water company with personal experience and expertise in wastewater. In fact, I've worked contract operations all over North America, from Florida to Washington State near the Arctic Circle up at Hudson's Bay, James Bay, solving water and wastewater, but predominantly wastewater issues. So it's a unique background that I bring in solving technical issues around wastewater solutions. So I think that's one of the other reasons Dan brought me, knowing that you are looking at more than just water solutions.
Yeah, and in my opinion is that we have that is the bigger issue to me, is the wastewater treatment. And I did notice on your map that there is just American Water does a little bit of that, but not a lot of that. So I'll be interested to hear more about that in the future as well. But that's why I'm certainly interested in the wastewater and how we handle the situation that we have currently in Jefferson County.
Give you a really quick snapshot, and won't
Sure.
take any more of your time, but I've run wastewater systems with 20 homes, communal systems, to 100 million gallon a day tertiary treatment, wastewater treatment plants, serving 600,000 people, and every form of treatment that you can have. So we have the expertise, but in West Virginia, we just don't have the resident facilities here.
We don't have and you know, how do we resolve all these issues that we have, and what's it going to take financially to see to it, to try to address the problems that we currently have? That's the biggest. Everything is always about money, and so it's a big challenge in a state like West Virginia. We're so rural, and our population is not what. I mean, even the Eastern Panhandle. You know, we have our population is Jefferson County specifically, but it's a big topic, a big issue, and we need help trying to find a solution. Anything you can do. Thank you so much.
To provide solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And I'm sorry that we're so limited, we couldn't have a longer discussion, but
Can we
we'll look
approach?
forward to that the next time. Yes, please. You can give it to our administrator. And
Thank
she'll-
you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is probate office, a quarterly fiduciary review. And so we will have to convene as a fiduciary review board.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the commission convene as a fiduciary review board to review the October quarterly review. So we'll take a minute and do that. Okay.
Morning. Here from the probate office to present a list of accounts and waivers that have met all of the requirements of our office and are pending approval and closure, and then also a list of wills and estates that have been opened since the last quarterly review in July that also require approval.
And what you're handing me is the same as what's on this list? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So you want to take a minute to.
Will you sign?
Yes, I will, yes, and I will sign in Commissioner Tabb's absence. We're going to try to get them back to you in the same order that you have them in.
It's fine.
don't know if we voted to go into, Jessica, we did actually vote. Thank you. I could have missed that. So having reviewed the list of wills probated, I'll entertain a motion that all presented estates have met the necessary requirements for closure and that they be approved and closed by the...
Second.
Seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's those. What?
Do we need a motion for the opening, or did that suffice?
For the, no, I think.
The new ones?
We did that.
Okay, okay, we just need a motion for the closures.
Yes.
Okay. We just acknowledge the new ones, okay.
Yes.
So acknowledged.
And I think that's it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think that completes our review of item number 4, so I'll move that we come out of a session as a fiduciary review board
Second.
and back into county commission. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Does anyone need a break before we go to the next item?
No,
Everybody okay? All right. So the next item on the agenda is item number 6. This is, we need to convene as a Board of Assessment Appeals.
so moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that this commission convene as a Board of Assessment Appeals. And so this is a little bit of a different process, only because it's October and not February. But we have a few folks who have requested, who have appealed their tax assessment, and so we'll move forward with the hearing on those. And if I'll ask that the assessor's office and the prosecuting attorney, do you want to sit at the table? Is that how you want to do that? And then the first couple on the agenda is Diana and William Penrod. Are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, come on down. And it's kind of awkward. We're used to,
You could not be here.
okay, we're used to sitting in the commission room down at the other office, so it's kind of awkward here. But we really need to have the prosecutor and the,
Yes, ma'am. It's my understanding that typically the tax assessor presents their evidence first.
yes.
So, in that case, I would call June Bowers.
Okay. June Bowers, would you come forward and sit at the table and speak into the mic? Yes. Yes. And I will, let me administer the oath to both the assessor's office and to the person who's bringing the appeal. So if you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Now you may proceed.
I have paperwork for the commissioners.
Okay. We have to put on a different hat, so it's a little bit of a different process.
No, this is awkward.
This is awkward. Thank you. We're used to sitting at the
Right.
meeting room in the courthouse, and so it's a little more convenient down there than it is here, but I think we can make do with what we have, so.
Very well. Ma'am, could you state your name for the record, please?
My name is June Bowers, and I work for the Jefferson County Assessor's Office as the senior appraiser.
How long have you been employed there, ma'am?
I've worked for Jefferson County for over 29 years. Prior to that, I worked for Collier and Trumbull in the State Tax Department, so it's 30-plus years that I've been in this position.
And ma'am, in that amount of time, has it been your job to deal with property taxes and assessments and appraisals and that sort of thing?
Yes, I actually handle the appraisals for tax purposes.
Madam Commissioner, I would move to qualify this witness as an expert in the fields of tax appraisal and assessment.
Ms. Penrod, do you have an objection to that? Okay.
Very well. Have you had the opportunity to examine the appeal that was filed by Mr. and Mrs. Penrod in this particular case?
Yes, the letter, I did get a copy of the letter requesting the appeal.
And did you review the documents and that sort of thing in the county files regarding this issue?
Yes.
Could you describe for the commission the property and the acts that you took in regard to this appeal?
Okay. If I may first actually explain a couple of things that actually apply to pretty much all of the appeals. In the front of the packet, starting with this, which I'm not sure if the commissioners are familiar with, is a letter from the State Tax Department informing us that we did pass basically our review for the 2015 tax year. That second page is showing that we have passed our sales ratio as far as increasing or decreasing values for the year.
Madam Commissioner, I would just move to mark this document as an exhibit.
All right, it'll be marked as an exhibit.
Mark it as Exhibit A.
The second sheet there in your packet is our monitoring report, which the State Department at one time did yearly. Now I believe they're going to do it every other year, but this is the 2015, saying that we actually passed all of our monitoring, which means that our sales were handled properly, and again, we made increases and decreases as were necessary for the tax year.
And Madam Commissioner, I would move to mark that document as Exhibit B.
Okay, it's marked as Exhibit B.
And the third one is just a blank copy of the actual increase letter that we send out to the property owners. If the property assessment goes up 10% or more from one year to the next, we are required by state statute to send these out.
Madam Commissioner, I would move to mark this document as Exhibit C.
It'll be marked as Exhibit C.
And then for purposes of the record, I would just move that these items be moved into evidence in this particular.
Okay, Ms. Penrod, have you received a copy of these exhibits? Do you have them?
I don't think so.
You actually received the increase letter.
Yeah, the increase letter.
And would just ask, how about just let her review them for a second? So she can see what they are.
Sure.
Any questions about that? All right. Do you have any objection?
Well, I don't see how you can justify
Well,
a
let me just
60% increase in 2 years.
let me clarify my question to you. Do you have any objection to the exhibits themselves? Okay, so they are entered into this.
Thank you.
as evidence.
Very well. Ms. Bowers, I asked you earlier a question about how you came, or how the office came to the conclusions regarding these increases. Could you explain the process that you went through and also your conclusions?
Okay. We have a sales ratio report that we print out each year from the system. We are required by the state to review that sales ratio and bring our values in, all of our values in based on sales. So we look at each neighborhood throughout the county, look at our values in comparison to the sales, and we'll make overall increases or decreases based on those sales.
So could you tell the commission what you did in this particular case?
Okay. This particular property, it is not a sale. It is one that was increased based on sales. But we are looking at a 14.19 acre property located in Charlestown District, which is District 2, Map 1, Parcel 52.1. It is a 2-story brick home that was, according to our records, built originally in 1840. Partial basement cellar, heat pump for the heating and cooling. 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths. Total square footage of the home, of the living area based on exterior measurements, is 3,584 square feet. Along with the house, there is a frame garage built in 1990, a lean-to, and a canopy built in 2008. Total appraised value, I guess I'll start with the land. The land is appraised at $100,600. The buildings, house and buildings, are appraised at $198,900 for a total appraised of $299,500. This was an increase based on sales, and the property owner did receive a letter. We had a total of 6 sales in this neighborhood for this particular tax year, which included 2 vacant land sales. Our ratio, with the increase, our ratio is at 93%, looking at our appraised values in comparison to the sales.
So your office did compare this property to these 6 sales?
We look at sales, we review sales to make sure our listing's correct. We look at our appraisals and do an overall increase based on the actual sales that we have for that particular year, which is July 1st to June 30th.
That's what you did in this case? And you found the ratio to be 92?
It was 93% for once we've done the increases. I don't have individual copies, but I do have a copy of the sales ratio if the commissioners would like to look at it.
Do you want to take a look at the sales ratio that she has? Is
I would like to move that particular document also into evidence, have it marked as Exhibit D.
Okay. I'll have to give her a copy. I didn't make copies for everybody.
I'll just view it real quick.
The second page is actually the averages. I have actually circled the ones that the state looks at as far as our sales ratio for a pass or fail. We are required by the state tax department to be between 90 and 110%. as far as our ratio, and we are at 93, so we are not really pushing, the values up any more than is required.
In this particular property and neighborhood, can you tell us what the increase was?
I don't have the previous, I can tell you it's more than 10%, but I do not have the previous value with me.
Is this the actual document that you will want to have marked as Exhibit D? Okay, and we'll just,
Exhibit D.
Exhibit D.
Yeah.
Right, and we'll let Ms. Penrod take a look at it after the commission's finished with it.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
You're going to have an opportunity, after June is finished, after she's finished, and he's finished questioning her, you're going to have an opportunity to also present your case, and you're going to have an opportunity to ask questions as soon as Mr. Nathan's finished. Thank you. Okay.
That's all I have, ma'am.
Now you may ask questions of Ms. Bowers.
Okay, why is raw land used when you're dealing with residential property, trying to figure out what the increase is?
Actually-
It doesn't seem like that should be done.
Actually, vacant land sales are a good basis for looking at the sales ratio. There is a difference as far as the listing, as far as vacant unimproved land and improved land. We actually do a study as far as with contractors, as far as a modifier to the base table that is in the system statewide. So we do look at the modifier, we do look at the values of the building, and we look at the values of the land.
Okay.
All right, I want to give you this so you can take it. Do you have any other questions of Ms. Bowers, Ms. Penrod?
No, I don't think so.
I believe one of the appraisers, my understanding is you were in the office, and one of the appraisers actually went over this. This would have been the sales that he actually went over with
He just told me
you.
that there were 6 sales. He didn't give me any sales.
Ma'am, I have one follow-up question. Ms. Bowers, is the use of the vacant land sales consistent with statewide practice?
Yes. Yes, it's actually good when we have a mixture of vacant land and improved sales.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Penrod, it's your turn to address the commission about your reasons that you believe that the assessment of your property is incorrect.
Well, it just seems extremely high and extremely excessive. We purchased the property in July of 1984, and over the first 29 years we lived there, it only increased by $86,200. Now, in 2014, it was increased by $36,700. Then again, in 2015, $30,800, making a total of $67,500, which is a 60% increase. I just don't think I can't think of any situation where anyone's property would increase 60% in 2 years. I just can't think of any possible situation, and we've made no improvements to the property. I have no problems with a fair and reasonable increase across the board, but it should be done fairly. It should be done the same amount, not some excessively high. Some people's assessments actually decreased. Some never went up at all, and then some went through the roof, like mine did. Maybe I just don't understand the system, but it certainly does not seem like fair and equitable. 60% is a huge increase.
Yeah. Do commissioners have a question for Ms. Penrod? Nathan, do you have any questions for Ms. Penrod?
Not for Ms. Penrod. I may recall Ms. Bowers and ask her one more.
All right, Ms. Penrod, let me ask you a question. Did you have a chance to go into the assessor's office and talk with them about your increase?
Yes,
and
I did.
And, okay, thank
They
you.
told me that it was because of 6 sales, but they didn't give me any of the details of the 6 sales.
Okay.
Question, just for reference for me, your property is right next to Jefferson High School, correct?
That's correct. We're actually behind Jefferson High School.
Just making sure I'm looking at the right one.
Yeah.
All right. No, if no one has any other questions of Ms. Penrod, Mr. Cochran, you can question your witness.
Yes, I have one more question of Ms. Bowers. Could you explain the basis for the apparent significant increase here?
The reappraisal that was established in the early 1990s was to equalize property values throughout the state of West Virginia. To keep this in line, we are required by the state to review all of the county based on sales on a year-to-year basis. There is no cap. We are required by the state to bring these values up to market value based on those sales. If there was a cap, I would have no problem with that. But at this point, if we don't bring the values up, we will not pass our monitoring up to what they require.
In the neighborhood, based on the sales evaluation that you conducted, did the property values increase?
The property values increased, and this is actually the rural area of Charlestown District. When we are looking at sales, we are not looking at sales within coveted subdivisions. We are looking at all properties that are outside of the coveted subdivision, so we are looking at rural property values and sales.
In your opinion, was this increase done in accord with the guidelines and the rules presented to you by the state?
Yes, they were.
And this is the same, the state agencies that have recently approved your procedures and reviewed your practices, correct?
Yes, that's what the letters were there in the front. The 2015 tax year, which is what we are discussing, we have passed everything for that year.
That's all I have.
Okay, I have a question for you, June. Does, Ms. Penrod is concerned over the amount of the increase over the past few years. Can you, does it seem to you, have there been other properties in that area that have also increased to that level?
Well, this would be an overall increase based on sales. So
Right.
the land was increased and the buildings were increased equally across the district in this neighborhood. There are actually factors that I have changed that apply to all. This is not something that we do individually. These are factors that apply to all properties within that neighborhood.
So you look at the neighborhood and you determine, you look at the sales of the properties in that neighborhood, and based upon those sales is how you determine what the property will be. Well, the computer model actually does that for you, but it's based upon sales in the neighborhood.
And if we're low, we have to look at increases to bring those sales into that 90, 110%.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Eric?
2 questions. First, June, do you know the average value for vacant land in that district, and where this one falls in line with those average values? I do.
We had two vacant land sales, but no, I do not have that information with me.
I research property values and real estate very often, as you well know. And this house is falling in at about, the vacant land alone is about 70% of the average value. 77% of the average value for that district, my house being one. And then the same question for the square footage of the improved, of the house itself, of the improvements. Do you know where that falls in the average? About 81%. So Just numbers for thought.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else from either of you? All right. Well, now comes the time for the commission to make the determination as to whether or not, and what we're looking for, what we have to see here is whether or not there has been an error made, and that's the only decision this commission is allowed to make, whether there's an error that's been made with regard to your assessment, and that's what we're looking for as a commission. So, Walt?
Hearing that no error had been made, I would move to deny.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we deny your request for appeal of your assessment. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Ms. Penrod, and I would suggest that, well, thank you, and I would suggest maybe with a little bit further communication, maybe it could be explained to you a little bit better than you've heard here today from us, and I know it's, but maybe it would be better explained by the assessor's office to your satisfaction, if you
Well,
would
it
meet
just
with
seems
them.
strange that all of a sudden, everything's skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It stayed pretty stable for a lot of years. And the problem is, taxes go up, your house payment goes up. Pretty soon, you can't make your house payment. Next thing you know, you've lost your house.
I definitely
That's real scary.
understand where you're coming from. My house is in the same district. In the last 5 years, I've went up over $100,000 in value. So we see it.
Well, this is an older house, and it attracts only a certain market when you're trying to sell it. It's not like it's in a subdivision where it kind of is like almost everybody else's houses, and you have a good marketability. For an older house, you don't.
Well, and I think for so many years, our values were so far down, and they were really low. And, when you're looking to sell, it's a good thing. When you're looking to pay your taxes, it's quite a different
Try
story.
to pay your bills and keep your head above water.
Absolutely. So I understand your concern, and I'm sure that you would probably get a lot more satisfaction if you would maybe have a sit-down with the assessor's office and a little bit better explanation than we were able to pull out today.
Well, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Penrod.
I will be in the office later this afternoon if you'd like to stop in.
I have 2 searches I have to get done, so if I get done in time.
I'm in and out, so I have no problem with going over with you.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you. The next the next appeal is filed by Richard and Mary Weber. Are the Webers here?
We did not hear back from them. We left a message, but we never heard back from them.
So do we need to take, do we have to take action on that? Do we have to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess since they did not present a case and they did not appear, then you enter a default judgment for the assessor. I mean, we tried to contact them.
Okay, and you just did not hear back from them? Okay, so.
Then in that case, I would move we enter default judgment in favor of the assessor.
Second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded twice, 3 times. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So then the next taxpayer is Jason Kowalski. Mr. Kowalski, would you come forward, please?
I have, like a summary of my case here. Should I hand it out or?
Do you, if you want to, actually, the way this is going to work, and I know you've been sitting here, so you probably saw a little bit of it.
Sit down and
but,
quiet for a minute.
But, yeah, okay. We're going to, the way this is going to work is Mr. Cochran will question Ms. Bowers, and then he'll have an opportunity to question you, and then you'll have an opportunity to present your case to the commission. So you can refer to that however you want, but I do need to administer the oath to you.
Okay.
If you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And Ms. Bowers has already been sworn, so she's still under oath. Okay, Mr. Cochran.
Yes, Madam Commissioner, I would call Ms. June Bowers, please.
Ms. Bowers, you may proceed.
Ms. Bowers, I would ask you to, for purposes of the record, to tell us where you are employed and what your position is.
I work for the Jefferson County Assessor's Office. I am the senior appraiser. I've worked in that office for over 29 years, and prior to that, worked for CLT and State Tax Department doing the same work.
And so, ma'am, you have over 29 years of experience in this particular field of tax assessment, appraisement, and that type of...
Yes, approximately 33, 34 years, yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I would move to have Ms. Bowers declared an expert in those fields.
Without objection, we'll declare Ms. Bowers an expert in that field.
Ms. Bowers, I'm going to hand you a document that's been marked as Exhibit A. Could you identify that document for us, please?
Yes, this is a letter from the State Tax Department, Department of Revenue, stating that we have passed our ratio study evaluation for tax year 2015.
And I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot, but could you let the appellant review that document for just a second?
It's basically from the State Tax Department saying that we have passed our sales ratio.
And ma'am, what does that mean?
That means that we have successfully set our property values to the satisfaction of the State Tax Department looking at sales.
I'm going to hand you another document, ma'am, which is identified as Exhibit B.
This is basically our monitoring summary stating that we passed our monitoring for tax year 2015.
And it's from which department?
It is from the State Tax Department.
Very well. And collectively, these documents mean that your department has been reviewed in its process and procedures in these issues and found satisfactory. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Very well, ma'am. Did you have the opportunity to review the issues surrounding Alan's property and his appeal?
Yes. Actually, his is a combination of a correction on our part and new construction. This particular neighborhood for the 2015 tax year, we had 2 sales and we were in. So with Mr. Kowalski's case, this is actually a lot that is less than 1 acre. Our standard for a home site is 1 acre. And anything less than 1 acre, we are required to put a factor, apply a factor to that, which is standard and set by the state. We actually have a chart that we utilize. At the time that Mr. Kowalski's house was picked up, the appraiser at the time had failed to add that factor. That was realized and it was added for the 2015 tax year.
Explain what that means.
Like I say, we have a 1 acre standard home site that is picked up for all improved properties. For that 1 acre, we pick up all of the improvements to the land. Any utilities, well, septic, public water, public sewer, telephone, cable, all of these, landscaping, fencing, driveway, all of those are land improvements. They are, that value is picked up in the land, and it is within that 1 acre home site. So if the property falls below an acre, we have a factor to make sure that those utilities are picked up uniformly throughout the state.
So, what else did you do with regard to Mr. Kowalski's property?
We also picked up a Trex deck that was added for that tax year. It was a 14 by 36 deck.
And did that addition of that deck make it, make the property more valuable?
Yes, between the correction on the land, the addition of the factor, and the deck, it actually took the I believe took the property up over 10%.
So could you describe for the commission the process that you used to value property to make the decision on the tax?
Okay, we actually have a lot in Craig Hill Estates. It is a .64 lot, improved with a 2-story vinyl sided home built in 2012. Has a full unfinished basement, heat pump for the heating and cooling, 4 bedrooms, 2 full, 1 half bath. Total square footage of living area at this time was, based on exterior measurements, was 3,319 square feet.
Okay, and so what did you do with that information?
Okay, with the information, the value on the property, the lot, the land with improvements was valued at $61,400. The house value was $258,300 for a total appraised of $319,700.
And did you advise Mr. Kowalski of this via letter, or of the increase in assessment?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that document?
I do not have no, we don't have copies of the letters. All we have is a computer printout. Mr. Kowalski may have a copy of his letter. We send the letters out. We get the letters, we send them out. We do have a computer printout that we actually check our letters by to show that a letter was sent.
Okay, so could you, again, explain to the commission the percentage, the ratio of the value and how you came to that determination?
Okay, in this particular neighborhood, there were 2 sales. We are at 93% based on those 2 sales, which is within the accepted range of the state tax department. In turn, we did not do an overall increase in this neighborhood. As I've said, his particular increase is based on new construction and the correction to the land.
Ma'am, I believe that it's my understanding there was some confusion about the actual square footage of the home. Could you just explain?
Yes, the owner brought to our attention that he felt the square footage was too high for this particular house. One of our appraisers went out, met with Mr. Kowalski, got inside the home. There was an area within the home that had a cathedral ceiling that did not have the second story. In turn, we have actually reduced the square footage in the home based on that. The square footage was reduced from the 33,319 square feet down to 2,959 square feet. This has been corrected for the 2016 tax year. For the 2015, it would reduce the appraisal by $9,600. In turn, the assessment would be $5,700. And that is a correction.
And because of the timing of that, you can't apply that until the 2016?
It is, we actually did it for the 2016. It was too late to actually correct the record itself. For the 2015, the property owner stated that he was going to appeal, so we can correct that for the 2015 if the commission would approve that. And that would take our value to $310,100.
That's all I have, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Kowalski, do you have questions for Ms. Bowers?
No.
Okay, all right, so then now, does the commission have questions for Ms. Bowers before we go to Mr. Kowalski's? Okay, Mr. Kowalski, you're ready to present your case.
Yes, I'm really here for the reduction about the square footage.
Okay.
And how it was said it could be reduced for this year by you. And another question about that is whether or not it could be retroactively reduced from when I lived there. It's worth asking.
Absolutely.
And I think a couple of my numbers were wrong, but I have some things that she was saying written down. I don't know if you want a copy of that or.
Can you tell us?
Just that by my calculation, it's slightly over a 3% reduction in appraised market value this year, or it would have been this year because of the square footage reduction. So I was hoping to get a 3% reduction in the property tax for this year. Okay, let me explain that a little bit differently. The square footage reduction affected the appraised market value by about 3%, by my calculations. I mean, it went from $319,700 to $310,000. Actually, I had $310,000, but I think she said $310,100. Okay, so that's not quite 3%, it's close to 3%. So I'm just asking for a similar reduction in the property tax this year. I think I said that right. Does that make sense? Or
No. You can't reduce the amount of taxes, you can only reduce the appraised value. So they can't reduce your tax amount. They can only rule on the appraised value.
okay, well, rule on the appraised value.
So you're asking them to reduce the appraised value
to what she said, yes.
What she said.
It would be a reduction of $9,600 for the 2015.
Does that have the effect of reducing what I pay?
I think it's up to the commission to make the decision if they're going to accept the numbers that have been presented to us, and you would pay your taxes based upon that number for 2015.
Okay, I like that. What?
You like that, okay. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay, Mr. Cochran, do you have any questions for Mr. Kowalski?
I do not.
Any redirect for your witness?
I think she's covered everything in the initial testimony. As a matter of housekeeping, I need to ask the commission to Exhibits A and B. And ma'am, did you have a sheet there showing Mr. Kowalski's individual calculations? Don't you have that?
Well, I have what I was talking about, but as that number's wrong.
I don't have a piece of paper that states that the appraisal is, because I haven't made the change on the system. I do have an actual
That's what I want to
2015 and have manually done it, and I can show him that.
Okay, well, I would like to introduce it into the record.
So you're talking
As
about
Exhibit C.
the review document?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be, that will, without objection, that will be introduced into the record, and that's
Exhibit C.
C?
Yes.
Okay, very well. All right,
And that's all that I have.
okay. Commission, we're ready to, without, do commissioners have questions for either party? All right. So, yeah.
Sure. I'll move that we approve the landowner's request to reduce square footage 2959, thereby reducing total value by 9,600 to 310,100 as outlined by the assessor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to reduce the square footage to 310,000, to the, not square footage, that's a big house, to reduce the total amount to $310,100 assessed value for Mr. Kowalski's property. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We did. We did what you wanted us to do. Thank you. Anything further?
Ma'am, could you give that particular document
Yes, I will.
to Jessica over there?
I have this one also for him.
And I think that concludes our Board of Assessment Appeals for today. The Webbers did not show up, so that is taken care of as well. So I entertain a motion to come out of
So moved.
Board of Assessment Appeals. Okay? All right, it's been moved and seconded, so any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Takes a little bit to get into that mode after you've been out of it for so
I'm
long.
not used to it this time of year.
Well,
My mind's elsewhere.
It is a long time to remember what, you know.
I'm now
so-
working on the sales ratio for next year,
Yeah, I
so
bet
this
you
is
And
hard
so
mindset.
We'll get this, we'll probably should return the packets that you gave us to you so that you
Yes.
can
Oh, I got mine in
dispose of them.
already.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's take a little recess. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Yes.